Ilana burst through the front door of her parents' house, pale and tearful. Her mother, Penelope Strickland, immediately realized the gravity of the situation. "Ilana, darling, what's happened?" She pulled her daughter tightly into a hug. Ilana collapsed into her mother's arms, weeping and shaking all over. She managed to squeeze out the words, "Zachary's gone." Penelope held her daughter gently, stroked her hair and tried to calm her down so that she could speak. Eleanor drew back her shaking hand slightly and pushed an envelope towards her father. "Anthony Strickland. He had sent it to me at work." She managed to say this with broken breath. Anthony carefully took the envelope. His expression was difficult to read, and before opening the envelope he asked cautiously, "Where is Benjamin? Is he with Zachary?" Ilana nodded weakly. Zachary had dropped Kevin off here earlier, saying that he needed to run an errand with Benjamin. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and added, her voice trembling, "And then I received the divorce papers at the office." Anthony sat in the armchair, his gaze flicking between his wife and daughter, who were cuddled up on the sofa like two survivors in a lifeboat, while Penelope whispered words of comfort to him. Carefully unfolding the divorce papers, Anthony's face grew dark as he realized that he hadn't received any warning or discussion. "He served her while she worked," he muttered, and beneath his calm exterior, he scanned the document again before turning his attention to Ilana. "Accusing you of infidelity, is this true?" Eleanor's face crumpled. "No, I've never cheated on him. He was convinced that I was having an affair with someone at the company. But that's not true. I love him." She sobbed, her voice suddenly breaking. Anthony's lips tightened. He didn't believe for a moment that the accusation was justified. He felt that it was likely that someone was setting him up. He asked if he had said anything to make him suspicious, and why he thought she was unfaithful. Eleanor's frustration exploded. "I don't know, maybe because I hugged a colleague after we closed a big deal," she said with a bitter smile, and then, after a hesitation, added in a smaller voice, "That once, after a work party, I got drunk and a colleague kissed me, and I stopped him immediately when I realized what was happening, but nothing else happened. I swear." Anthony frowned and turned the page. He was demanding joint custody of Benjamin, but he didn't want anything to do with Kevin. He said it with disbelief in his tone. And in fact, he was demanding that Kevin's surname be changed and his name removed from the birth certificate. "Do you know why the room suddenly went quiet?" Penelope and Ilana exchanged a terrified glance, and then Ilana threw himself into his mother's arms and sobbed. Anew Anthony's voice broke the noise, steady and commanding. Eleanor gave me a reluctant glance. Eleanor lifted her tear-streaked face to meet her father's piercing gaze. Penelope watched uneasily as Anthony's tone grew heavier. Was it true that he was claiming that Kevin was not his child, and that there was a DNA test here that showed that Zachary was less than 1% likely to be the father? Eleanor let out a stifled cry and buried her face in her mother's shoulder. Penelope gave her husband a hard stare. "This is not going to work." Anthony did not flinch. "Do you know anything about this?" he asked Penelope, his voice cold. "Did Eleanor tell you?" Penelope hesitated, weighing up the consequences of her answer. In the end she answered, "No, this is the first I've heard of it. Eleanor and we were kept in the dark." "Anthony doesn't seem to believe you. He demands that you both hand over your mobile phones." Penelope is furious. "No, you can't invade our privacy like that." Anthony's gaze becomes stern. "If you have nothing to hide, you won't mind. Either you unlock your phones or I'll file for divorce tomorrow." Penelope's voice becomes hostile. "I've never given you any reason to distrust me. Anthony, you're not getting our phones and we're not getting a divorce." His tone was firm. "I've ignored too many lies over the years, but not anymore. Watching my daughter raise another man's child changes everything. Give me the phones now or this is over." Penelope suddenly lost her cool. "Go to hell with you. I'll take everything you have and leave you with nothing." Anthony stood there, throwing the papers on the coffee table. His voice was low and disappointed. "Go and do what you think you need to do." With those words, he walked into the kitchen, leaving a shattered family behind. A few minutes later, he reappeared, holding a plastic zip-top bag in his hand. He turned the bag inside out and put it over his hand like a makeshift glove. Carefully, he collected the used napkins that were scattered in front of Irina. After the task was complete, he turned the bag inside out and sealed it with a sharp movement, pinching the zipper closed with his fingers. Penelope's voice broke the silence, a shrill cry of rage. "What do you think you're doing?" She pointed at the bag, shaking her hands in accusation. Her whole body seemed to shake with rage. This was a rage Anthony had never directly confronted in their almost years of marriage. It made him realize that he might not really know the woman he had spent his life with. "I'm going to contact Zachary and ask him about the DNA testing service he used," Anthony replied calmly but firmly. "He found out that Kevin is not his son. I need to know if Eleanor is mine or if you have been lying to me for nearly 30 years. Penelope let out a guttural scream, lunged at him, her nails clawing mercilessly at his face. The feeling of suffocation is indescribable, unless you have experienced that panic-stricken, suffocating struggle to breathe again. Despite the fact that 40 years had passed, instinct reminded Anthony of his brief period of karate practice, and his muscle memory was still there. Just like Penelope nails, his skin reddened. He instinctively struck her solar plexus with pinpoint accuracy. The blow was not violent, just enough to take her breath away. She collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, her face a mask of horror as Penelope fell to the ground. Ilan's scream pierced the air. She was clearly panicking when she saw her mother struggling. Anthony turned and walked towards his office. He knew Penelope would soon regain her breath, but he couldn't wait. He needed to leave before Penelope recovered. He quickly packed his laptop, iPad, and a few sets of change of clothes and left. He turned off the Wi-Fi router and reset the password. Penelope depended on the internet for everything, from Facebook to Reddit, and without Wi-Fi she would be completely cut off from the world. Stuffing his things into his backpack, Anthony walked past his recovering wife without a word and left. It was over. His first stop was the nearby McDonald's, where he connected to their free Wi-Fi. There, methodically, he accessed his financial accounts. He paid off and closed their jointly held American Express Gold card, then used the bill pay function to close their Chase card. He transferred half the funds in their jointly held bank account to his name, under the name of a landscaping business. It was a simple but effective move. That evening, Anthony arrived at the Davises' house. Adam Davis met him at the door with a knowing expression on his face. This Anthony began to say that disaster was an understatement, to which Adam replied, and then led him out onto the terrace overlooking the golf course, where they sat with drinks in hand, the weight of the situation overwhelming them. Finally, Anthony broke the silence and asked Adam, "How's Zach?" Adam raised an eyebrow and said solemnly, "Do you really need to ask? He lost his little boy, Anthony, and you lost your grandson. You can't just recover from something like that." Anthony's shoulders slumped with guilt. "I can't face Eleanor or her mother Penelope knowing that Kevin may not be Zachary's. She kept quiet, and now I don't even know if Eleanor is mine." Adam's expression turned sullen. "The baby's anger, I've never seen her so upset. If Eleanor is not Benjamin's mother, I think she will make drastic moves." Anthony nodded grimly, telling her to stay calm. "We don't need any more doctor moms." Their conversation was interrupted by Baby, who stormed into the room and stared coldly at Anthony. Raging into the room, she stared coldly at Anthony and questioned why he was there. Adam raised a hand to try to calm her down. "Take it easy, sweetheart." Anthony took Zachary's side. Before Adam could explain, the doorbell rang. 2 policemen stood on the porch, their expressions inscrutable. Anthony met their gaze with a calm, resigned expression. "I expected this," he said softly, turning to offer his hand so the policeman could cuff him. As the officer led him away, Adam assured him, "I'll call Zachary, and we'll settle this in 6 months." The chaos had largely subsided. Eleanor, who had initially fiercely opposed the divorce, first offered to undergo counseling and then made some unreasonable demands. The DNA test results finally confirmed that Alana was indeed Anthony's biological daughter. The apocalypse gave him strange feelings of both relief and disappointment, while his love for her as always disappeared irrevocably. The connection between Anthony and Eleanor was almost, and he doubted whether the two could resume their relationship as before. She refused to let him see his grandson Kevin. A photo Anthony took at the pharmacy clearly shows scratches and fingernail marks on his face, which becomes key evidence in the misdemeanor charge of assaulting his wife. Meanwhile, Anthony is entangled in divorce proceedings with Penelope, whom he neither trusts nor respects. Penelope is strongly opposed to a divorce and her legal team is constantly delaying the proceedings. The stalemate seems set to continue indefinitely were it not for a violent incident between Penelope and Eleanor in the car park of a nightclub. The 2 women were unable to identify their attacker, but security footage shows a short man dressed entirely in black and wearing a ski mask launching a brutal attack with a long, heavy pole. The footage shows that despite suffering serious injuries, including broken bones and several teeth knocked out, both women survived from their hospital beds with no permanent physical damage. They admitted to having no idea who the possible target might have been, although they suspected Eleanor's husband, Zachary Davis, of having a motive. Zachary was 6'3" and therefore ruled out as a suspect, and investigators had no credible leads. The attack profoundly changed Penelope and Ellen's lives. They stopped socializing altogether and were instead trapped at home. Anxious, they argued a lot, and over time they gave up fighting for custody of Benjamin in the divorce, which was finally settled on a 50-50 split, with Zachary named as the primary custodian. Neither Penelope nor Zachary received child or spousal support as part of the agreement. New discoveries emerged during the court proceedings. A court-ordered DNA test proved that Andrew Herbert was the biological father of Kevin, resulting in Zachary's name being removed from Kevin's birth certificate. As a result, Andrew was required to pay child support to Eleanor. Andrew is in a very difficult situation. His wife has filed for divorce and is demanding child support for the 3 children and alimony. Andrew insists that his wife stay at home and raise their children, as she did with their first child. The financial pressure has driven him into poverty, a situation he finds hard to overcome. Meanwhile, despite the upheaval caused by his wife's infidelity, Zachary has found stability with the unwavering support of his parents. He retains his position at Anthony's Landscaping and continues to invest in the company's growth. Benjamin thrives in this environment, although he is emotional when he visits his mother. His mother sometimes expresses anger towards Zachary and sometimes laments her separation from him in tears. Meanwhile, grandmother's hostility towards Anthony remains unabated. Penelope's pain deepens as Anthony's charm and popularity among the single women at the country club become apparent. Despite the turmoil, Anthony's parents, Adam and Bibi, stand firmly by their son and grandson. Bibi shows no signs of backing down from the family challenge, and her indomitable spirit is on display as she wins her 5th consecutive women's golf championship even without a full set of clubs. And that, my friends, is the end of the story. If you like the story, please like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you.